Can Southampton bounce straight back to the Premier League? I had a great chat with Southampton fan and YouTuber Football Martin yesterday. We've got a clip of that bit of the conversation coming up for you, and we'll link the full interview at the end of the video. Enjoy.
Looking at the season ahead, Benjamin, regards to Ipswich and Southampton, do you see our teams, the teams that we both support, being the two favourites as it currently stands?
Potentially, yeah. And I'd love to focus a bit on Southampton with you because they're a fascinating case, aren't they? And when you look at the three teams that have come down, they're all grouped together, but they're all coming at it from such different angles, albeit the same place. I can see why the betting is going that way, because we normally lump on the three parachute teams. They've got the most money. They've got that big advantage. They've in theory got the best squads from the Premier League last year. We know there's going to be a lot of churn through the summer, and you'll know better than me actually about that with the the Ward-Prowse, who was it, Lavia. There was three of them, big sales.
Nathan Teller was another big one for us at the time as well, because he started that campaign so well. He was such a big player in the first few games, and he was sold unexpectedly right at the back end of that window.
There you go. So we'll get on to that. That's something we have to cope with. I understand why people are holding back on Leicester, because manager's just about to be confirmed, and we don't know in terms of sanctions. And I've said it many times that if I were a Leicester fan, I'd take a points deduction now over a soft transfer embargo and the EFL rooting over every spreadsheet. But if I can flip it back round to you, Martin, in terms of Southampton, they are going to be up there in the betting. Can you just compare this to a couple of years ago? Because I guess given you've bounced, come back down, etc., there's less saleable assets. There's no Teller, Ward-Prowse, Lavia, although there is a Dibbling, and who was the lad who went last week? Suleimana. So money's been raised already. How are you feeling about this year compared to a couple of years ago, after what was 11 years running the Premier League?
Yeah, we have 11 years in the Premier League, well established, when the current owner, Sport Republic, took over the football club, and they said they weren't going to make wholesale changes at the club, and they quickly made wholesale changes. So everything they said they were going to do, they did the opposite, really. They had their manager, Ralph Hasenhüttl, who worked on a really tight budget for such a long period of time, managed to do wonders with a very limited budget. And then their first full, so they took over in the January. Then you have that you get to end of that season. There wasn't a massive amount of investment, but there was a lot more than there had been in years before. And the biggest issue was that they wanted rid of Hasenhüttl. They didn't really want to stick with him. And the moment they could sack him, they did, and they got rid of him at a real pivotal time, I thought, really. And it was just before the World Cup, and it was a long break in that Winter World Cup. And that break was when they brought Nathan Jones in. And I went to watch us in a game, I think it was in the EFL Cup against Lincoln City, and we were absolutely atrocious. We were so short of fitness, and we just looked well off the pace. We played Brighton, the first Premier League game, back after that World Cup, and I knew there and then we would get relegated because we looked so far short. We weren't organised. Then we go down, and like you say, it's the first time we got relegated in 11 years. So it's a big thing for the football club. They changed manager after Jones, and they'd used Ruben Selles, who struggled. It was a huge gig to take on. He was never going to save us.
He's now got a Year 2 parachute team this season as well, hasn't he? But carry on.
Yeah, so and then obviously they relieve him of his duties. They decided to go with Russell Martin. We all know Russ Martin. He had a certain set way. The fans were really no one was really happy with it. But they, like you said, they had some really big sellable assets in the likes of Lavia, Ward-Prowse, Nathan Teller.
Livramento?
Yeah, Livramento. You had Shea Adams going into the final year of his contract. Stuart Armstrong. There's some really good players there. And look, they rate the centre back as well. Salisu was a decent centre back. They raised a lot of money. It was around about 150 million they raised
Amazing.
in that summer. And then Martin's got a massive uphill struggle. The fans are not really on his side. They really want him. And then they're trying to make masses of changes. But actually, he did well because he brought everybody together. He's a good, very good man manager. And he reunited things. And yeah, we got up, and it was, via the playoffs in the end. But we did it. But this time round, Benjamin, for me, I feel we're in a far worse place in terms of the squad. We don't have a Shea Adams. We don't have a Stewie Armstrong. Shea Adams was a top player, and a lot of people played him down. He didn't score enough goals. But in the Championship, he was the reason Southampton did really well, because him and Adam Armstrong, they really hit it off. They had a really good partnership, and they linked up so well, and they did limited business in that window other than a few loans, which was Downs, Taylor, Harwood-Bellis. And
it's decent limited business there, isn't it, to be fair? Those two were brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah, they were brilliant for us in that season. And they obviously had those obligations to buy them if they got promoted. And obviously we had to buy them. I think the biggest problem when we went up is they didn't step up. Definitely Harwood-Bellis, never quite good enough for the Premier League at this moment in time. He's going to be a good player. There's no doubt about that. But he really needs to focus on his, at times I think his attitude's a little bit poor. He looks around at others, he blames others. For me, he's not the ultimate leader just yet, even though he's been the England under-21 captain. Downs was just short. But do you know the biggest thing, Benjamin, that I've noticed from watching the Will Steele side this weekend in the pre-season friendly was the fitness levels. The fitness levels in the Championship were okay, but they're used to having the balls. It's all ball heavy. Mm-hmm. The minute you want a manager to start going to press and you play a different way, they're not conditioned to do it.
No.
And that would be for me a big challenge going into this season. But I just don't think we have the players this time round like we had last time round. And I think there's much more of a rebuild that needs to happen. But the squad's huge. It's huge, massive.
Well, people will look at it, and do you know, I'd even forgot about Ross Stewart, who, in theory, if he's fit in the Championship, that's 15, 20 goals. And I know Adam Armstrong was loaned out last year, but that's 20, 25 goals straight away. Yeah. So as much as in comparison to your side 2 seasons ago, I agree with you. I'll bow to your superior knowledge, in fact. But if you support Preston or Bristol City, you're going, we'll have Flynn Downs, Adam Armstrong, Ross Stewart, etc. So it's that weird... It's that weird chasm thing, isn't it? What was your take on, just quickly, sorry, I know I'm hijacking your interview with me now.
It's good.
What was your take on Will Steele being hired? Who else was in the conversation, and were you happy with that appointment?
Yeah, I'm fairly happy with it. I've got to be honest. I like him. I heard a lot sort of like from the inside and the outside in sort of the managerial appointment. There's no doubt they approached Danny Roll back in January. They interviewed him in the summer. From what I'm told, I don't think he interviewed that well, to be honest. I think out of the standout candidate of the managers they interviewed, Steele was the standout candidate, I was told. And I was told by that was a very good source inside the football club a few months ago. And they were really excited by him and what he presented when he walked through the door. And I'm excited by him. I like his style of play. I've watched a lot of his podcasts that he's done with different hosts. I thought the high performance one with Damien Hughes and Jake Humphrey was very, very good on high performance. I thought it was a really, really good podcast. And it gives you a really good insight into him as a person, where he's come from. And then the Monday Night Football kind of backed it up for me. That show that he did with Jamie Carragher and Dave Jones in the Monday Night Studio, I thought he come across really well. And I like the way he wants to go about playing football. The fact that he's prepared to adapt to what he's got at his disposal. The fact that he wants to find ways to win football games. He won't necessarily just keep playing the same way. If it's not working, he will look to find personnel and players and systems to beat teams. And I think that's the one thing we've struggled with our last sort of 3 or 4 managers, that they've not been adaptable enough to really make us flexible. And I think that's the one thing I think Steele will bring to Southampton. You touched upon Adam Armstrong, actually, and they talk about dead wood, don't they, when you get a relegated side? And they all talk to me about Adam Armstrong. Yeah, he's dead wood, get rid of him. I was like, where do you buy 24 Championship goals? You don't. And any other club in that division would bite their hands off to Adam Armstrong. And every single person that spoke to at the weekend at Eastleigh in the pre-season friendly will be delighted if he went. I can't believe it.
That's levels, isn't it? That's the chasm between parachute teams and the rest of the league. That he was surplus to requirements in the Premier League, and I always think it's a little bit unfair with these players. Like Pookie used to get it, and Mitrovic used to get it. They score 30 in the Championship and 10 in the Premier League, or 5 or what have you, and it's like, well, come on, apply the context here. Normally, in a team that had 13 shots per game in the Championship, 13 to 18 compared to 2 in the Premier League, and like 15% less possession or whatnot. So, yeah, I can understand both sides of it, and it's the haves and the have-nots. And look, I've covered this league for long enough when Ipswich were under Marcus Evans and being horribly jealous of parachute teams, and you'd get to like minute 70 in the game or whatever, and you'd look over at the touchline and 3 players were coming on that would all get into your first team. And to circle it back to your initial question, Martin, and that is why the parachute teams at the start of every season will always be favourites. But look, I can easily present to you, it's easy to lay out with Southampton because they've got a new manager. So you can say, it doesn't quite work. It takes a bit of time to, get up to speed. We get another ridiculously high points total, and Saints miss the playoffs or miss out in the playoffs. It's easy to paint that scenario. And for Ipswich as well, you can say, it was lightning in the bottle. They've lost the momentum. Now they've got to replace the midfield. They've got to replace Liam Delap, and they miss out in the playoffs or miss the playoffs completely. So you can spin it round the other way, but everybody understands the reasons why they're first and second in the betting, and why Leicester are just that little notch lower.
Yeah. When you talk about levels, it is really interesting, because when we were like talking about transfers, players coming in, and I really like Josh Sargent, for example, at Norwich. I think he's a really good striker. For me, sometimes experience when you're in this division is really important. And I actually put it out across a lot of my channels, and I spoke about him and looked at some of his statistics. And I know he suffers with a lot of injuries, and a lot of Saints fans say, well, he's not a Premier League striker, he's crap in the Premier League. But the level you're at now...
What division is Southampton in, Martin?
Exactly. That's it. And the one thing I worry about us a little is having Championship experience, players that can be leaders when the going gets really gritty and really tough. Now, we brought Damien Downs in, he's an American international, played in Bundesliga 2 last year. He looks like he's going to be the standout striker next season. But I've looked at his clips, but then I compare him to what I saw with Shea Adams when Shea Adams was at Southampton. They're chalk and cheese. Adams is a far cleaner, finished, polished player. So all of a sudden you've got somebody that's raw and young. I just think the mix of players in your squad when you drop down, it's important, isn't it?
It's vitally important. I suppose one thing that might, put your mind at ease is look at Sunderland last season. They had a team of kids. Didn't have the. We said the whole time, they won't get promoted. They need more Championship experience. And I think they got Alan Brown in from Preston, who's played about 5,000 Championship games, but it didn't need to really use him. Just bring him on as sub in a few games and whatnot. Unfortunately, with the big problem we've got in English football now, and this is serious, I'm laughing about it and say, what division is Southampton in? But my understanding is that agents will say to players, don't go to a yo-yo team. Do you know what I mean?
It's a good point.
You might get into the... Look, if you've never played in the Premier League, fine. But you might get into the Premier League, but you need to go to a team in the 17 the second you get promoted if you do that. So it is difficult. And is it realistic for Southampton and Ipswich to sign players that are going to work in the Premier League? They're trying to do it, and Ipswich have just brought in a sort of Dutch central midfielder, but that's where you're going to find those players. And look, Southampton have been amazing over the years at trading, haven't they? And have probably sold more incredible players really than any other club when you think about it, of that kind of level that's not elite. But Yeah, you have to cut your cloth accordingly, and you can say, are they Premier League ready? But you can miss out on promotion
Easy,
trying
quite
to build
quickly.
a squad of Premier League players, and tick tick tick. 2 years of parachute payments is then 1 year of parachute payments, and then the conversation becomes just get us up now with whoever's in the side whatsoever.